UFO Contact from the Pleiades, Volume 1 and 2, Billy Meier. One of the most extraordinary contactee cases from the 70s. There are a lot of folks who would like to debunk it and consider it a hoax. Listen to a researcher who was there on site beyond the sightings. What she experienced, along with her husband and two other researchers, says there's more to the story, but consequently gets overlooked by people who didn't see it up close, firsthand.
It's like I tell people that have been detractors through the years. Number one, what evidence did you have examined and where was it examined? And number two, can you duplicate every single thing that Meier presented to us? Not just one thing, every single thing. That includes the sounds, the movie footage, the photographs, and the metal, and all of the witnesses. Can you duplicate that? That's when you can call it a hoax, if you can do that.
Brit Elders is my guest. She actually has firsthand knowledge of the Billy Meier case. And this is something that is unusual because there is so much information around it and not a lot of it firsthand. So I'm excited to talk with Brit because she was there with her husband for 7 years investigating this case. And Brit, could you just give us a setup? Because it's been, what is this? This is the 45th year anniversary for the publication of the book.
Yes, we actually got into the investigation in 1977. Billy Meier had just moved into the farmhouse he's in now. And a friend of ours, Lieutenant Colonel Wendell C. Stevens, brought the case to us. He had been fascinated with the subject of UFOs since he was in the Air Force. And he said, I really think you need to throw your company, Intercept, behind it. At that time, we had an investigative company called Intercept. It was electronic countermeasure. We provided financial institutions and Fortune 500s with protection from eavesdropping and wiretapping.
From what I understand, your husband was really a little bit hesitant to get involved with something as quirky and weird as UFOs.
Absolutely. He did not want to risk the reputation we'd worked so hard to get by chasing after a subject that in the 70s was still pretty taboo. You didn't have people discussing it on the news. You didn't have people discussing it even at parties. You brought it up and people moved away from you. So he wanted to just focus on his work and what we were doing with Intercept and move forward. But we saw the photographs, and we both said, these are just too good to be true. They're too clear. They're too perfect. Wendell, in the meantime, went to Switzerland, met with Meier, and came back. And he says, this case really deserves a really careful look at. And let's take a look and see what we find. We had a business situation that took place in London. So we decided to just pop over to Switzerland. We figured in one day we would figure out how Billy was manufacturing these and head out. That didn't happen.
Yeah, one day
we were
turned
there
in
5 days where we spent every waking moment with him, talking to him, questioning him. He opened the house up to us, the farm, wherever we wanted to go. He allowed us free reign over everything to see if there was any way that we visually saw that he could possibly be manufacturing these things. We couldn't find anything. So he, the last day, brings out this little pink shoebox and sets it down, opens it up, and inside the shoebox are metal samples. And he pulls out the little canisters and he says, these are for you. Take them back to the United States, have them analyzed. They are the metal from the skin of the spacecraft. Okay, so now we have something we can actually thump on it for the investigation.
Yeah.
Then he gives us audio recordings of the craft, and the sounds are just remarkable, nothing like I've ever heard before. Then he turns over the inner negatives and the 8mm movie footage. And he said, this is for you to take back to the United States and have analyzed. And we did. And it took 7 years because every time we would think, okay, we've got this answered, we would have to go to a new phase of investigation, bring in new processes that were being developed at that time. It took 7 years, and it was quite remarkable. We were in laboratories on 3 continents. We analyzed the material as thoroughly as we could at that point in time. We were using very sophisticated labs and scientists with the knowledge to really delve into it.
This is what, 1977, 1980, you're talking, we didn't have Photoshop. We didn't have anything that made these kinds of pictures easy to manipulate.
Exactly. We didn't have personal computers. At that point, they were so expensive. You had to have a programming or an engineering degree to operate them.
What I find interesting is that all of the people who have basically poo-pooed your story and said, and tried to debunk you, weren't on site firsthand. And I don't know how that works.
Yeah, well, sort of like what we did in the beginning. We looked at this and we said, oh my God, they're too good to be true. And I think a lot of people did that. Unfortunately, they just threw out a wealth of information because the photographs were analyzed at places like the University of Arizona. JPL, their head guy, Robert Post, looked at these photographs, and even though he did not understand or buy into the fact that Meier was having contacts, he said, I don't know how we could make this. We brought in special effects people. Wally Gentleman in particular, he worked with Kubrick on 2001, A Space Odyssey, and Wally said, okay, let's make a model, let's hang it from a string, let's film it, and then test it against the Meier photographs and see what happens. Well, the edges of the photographs that Meier took were quite large, showed the object to be about 21 feet in size. Wally's model came out looking very small. The edges showed that. In Wally's pictures, we could see the string that was suspending the model. In Meier's photographs, there were none. So little things like that. And people don't know the background of the investigation. They don't know that we lived at the farmhouse during that 7-year span for over 365 days. And we never saw a sign of hoaxing. The metal samples, totally unique, because they were made with a cold synthesis process, which we didn't have at that time. The metallurgist that looked at them was from IBM. He had them under a scanning electron microscope, and he could see that the metal was not heated and poured, which was the way we were doing things. It also contained thulium, which is a rare earth element, very difficult and costly to extract. And it had metal that was separated by a crystalline structure. So he was so interested in what he was seeing, he called in 42 other scientists to work with him on it. So it wasn't like Lee and I, my husband and I, were sitting there saying, oh, this is going to be this or this is going to be that. We went to people that had the background to know this stuff.
What I thought was interesting, too, about your husband, that he lived with a Schwarr in South America, so he would have had a really unique perspective on some of the things that he was looking at.
Yeah, definitely. He has spent a lot of time with the Schwarr tribe down in Ecuador. He was very left-brained. When he would think, okay, we got this, set it aside, then he'd think of 50 new questions, and we'd go off in different directions.
There is a ton of information in your book. I'm really glad that people are being reintroduced to it, because after years of basically ridicule and writing him off, and I saw the photographs, 6 of them were auctioned off in December from Wendell Stevens, his archive. Did they come from you?
No, they didn't, and they shouldn't have been auctioned off at all, because Billy gave those to us. Mm-hmm. They were part of Wendell's collection, and we all have the photographs because we all looked at them, we all worked with them. Wendell was part of our team, which consisted of Wendell and Lee, Tom Welch, and myself. We all worked together with that. But no, they really shouldn't have been auctioned off. That's never been the point or the purpose. We decided in late 78 to go ahead and put together volume 1 so that people would know what was going on. And that was our way of saying, you make up your own mind. We're not going to tell you what to believe. It's up to you.
The thing is, he seems so genuine And at the beginning, this was something he wasn't trying to prove. He was just saying, this is what happened. Isn't this cool?
That's exactly what was going on. He was he was such a simple, great, earthy, humble man when we first met Meier. People were coming from all over the world, disrupting his life, wanting to talk to him. And he was actually taking the time to sit down and have a conversation with them. Finally, he said, I have work to do, and if you want to talk to me, come get in the fields with me. And that's what they did. And that was how he continued to carry on. But no, Billy was so kind and so gentle to everyone that came to his place. It was really quite remarkable.
Other people saw these things too. So it wasn't just him. There were witnesses, his family, and people in the town. And so, if he was trying to fake all this and go around doing the hocus pocus and strings and wires downtown, I don't know how that would have been possible.
Well, it really wasn't. I even went to the man that ran the post office there in Schmidrudi in Switzerland and said, have you ever seen these? And he says, oh, yeah. And I said, what do you think about him? And he says, well, I don't know, but they're strange. And I said, what do you think of Meier? Well, he's strange too if he's talking to them. So they would admit that they had seen them, but they didn't quite want to jump into the fact that, oh, yeah, they're UFOs.
Yeah.
So there were over 100 witnesses that came forward and spoke with us. And many of them we filmed. In fact, we're coming out with a documentary later in May. Contact from the Pleiades documentary has a lot of this information in there as well.
Stanton Friedman called it because you talked with him and he was saying this has got one way to go. The trajectory is it'll be a cult, and then they will follow him, and that's what happened.
It really is. It was very interesting because I learned a lot about human nature through this case, and the fact that, one, you can never, ever give people enough. They always want more. That's the first thing. Second thing was, people have a tendency to worship something new and unique, or something they don't fully understand. And they really put Meier on a pedestal. It was kind of disheartening to see so many people thinking that this is the individual that is going to alter and change their life and magically wave a wand and everything will be fine. And Billy was human. He's just like you or me. He has ideas, thoughts. He gets frustrated. He gets angry. He's happy. All of these different things. He is not a perfect human being. There is no such thing, in my opinion. Yeah. He sort of fell into that, I've got people finally believing what I'm saying aspect of things. But then he backed out of it. He's much more grounded now and centered than he was, say, in the mid-'80s when the people were just swamping the farmhouse. It was amazing.
I think that would be hard for anyone to deal with overnight. All of this onslaught and attention, and you don't have time to clean up your act if you have one.
Right, exactly. It's very, very true. And I had a Zoom call with him the other day, and it was wonderful. We just talked like old friends. It was really nice to just see him being himself, being comfortable. He looks healthy. He's in his 80s. He looks very good, sounded good. His English isn't as fluent because he hasn't used it as much as he used to. Mm-hmm. But he's doing well. And he just had that same centered, balanced persona that he had when I first met him.
We'll talk about the Pleiadians in a minute, but I want to ask, you were around him, and there were some experiences that you write about that defy explanation. Yeah,
we've had several experiences there. I think my favorite was Billy had gone off to a contact. It was in the middle of the night, and Lee and I were staying in a little camp trailer next to the house, the farmhouse. And we saw Billy walk off behind the house and go down this trail that leads into the forest. And we knew better than to try to follow him because they would break off the contact and refuse if somebody was trying to follow him. So we stood outside, sort of waiting for him to come back. It's pitch black out there, and suddenly everything lit up. It was this blue-white, bright light that is practically indescribable. but it lit up from all directions, beneath the trees, above the trees, through the trees, all around. And he is surrounded by forest and hills, his house is. And we looked at each other and said, did we really see that? And it blinked out, and then it blinked back on. It did this 3 times. It was mind-boggling. It was like it telling us, okay, yeah, we're here. And then it was gone. And then Billy came back several hours later from a contact and came back from a completely different direction. Apparently, he had been picked up in the forest and dropped off a few miles from the house, and he walked back to the house.
That is what I think is very difficult if someone isn't there to actually witness it, then saying, okay, do you believe Brit? And
yeah,
it doesn't matter. Because the only thing you can do is tell your story and say it's up to each and every one of us who hears this to determine, is this possible? And what if it is possible? Basically, what if it is possible? There's a whole lot more questions.
Absolutely. That's what I was saying. One answer leads to 50 more questions. It is something that if you have an experience, then it's yours. Nobody else's. It's yours. And that's why when we put out the books, we just wanted people to know there's evidence, there's documentation behind this. The message itself is quite beautiful. It was given to him, all of this evidence and the contact notes, to support his claims. But again, unless you have that experience, you really don't know. My belief is this: the evidence to Meier's case supports his claims, period. But Billy's the only one that will ever know the honest truth.
Now, his contact with the other beings, he was given information that actually might have, happened a little bit later, even 2 years or 3 years. And the thing is, it did happen. And that information came from external sources, not him.
Right. Well, I can give you an example.
Yeah.
We were present in, it was 80 or 81, I can't remember, when Anwar Sadat of Egypt was assassinated. And we were actually at the airport when the first reports came through and said it was a lone gunman. We went back to the farmhouse, walked in. Billy was sitting there on the couch, and we said, what's going on? What's the latest? And he said, well, what they're saying isn't true. And we said, how do you know? And he says, well, just a minute. And he runs back and he gets this huge blue binder full of the contact notes. And he starts paging through it and he finds it and he says, it's here. And the Pleiadians had told him that Anwar Sadat would be assassinated during a military parade, and there would be several people that were responsible. It was the complete opposite of what was being broadcast on the news, and it was what was actually factual that was brought out later.
Okay, so that's very difficult to debunk when you've got the paperwork in front of you that he's written. He has to thumb through the diary to go find it. And again, That's a firsthand account that you were witness to.
That's right. That's right. And there were other things like that as well. He told us about the 3-day Pope about a year before it happened. Just various different things that had come up through conversation that he had contact notes on, that he had been given this information by the Pleiadians before the event happened. But they had a system that they called the event clock, which I kind of love, because if event A happens and event B happens, that means event C is going to happen. But if A doesn't happen or B doesn't happen, then C won't happen. So it's a way of looking at what's happening on this planet based on the events as they unfold.
What's really interesting is today there was a headline in one of the magazines that I subscribe to, and it said, do you go by clock time or event time? And I thought, how synchronistic, because that, to me, that underscores the event time is actually valid. It's relevant. It means something.
Right. Very good point. No, that's great. The synchronicity around this case is really quite remarkable. We had experiences as we were laying out the photojournal, because what I did was when we laid out the original, I sat in the middle of the living room floor and drew out picture by picture where I wanted it positioned on the page and everything. And I'd go outside and I would just kind of be at odds with myself. Well, do I want that there, or do I want this to come first? How is it going to present better so we can get into other aspects of the case? And I'd have a shooting star go by. And it was just like every time you had a question and you would think, okay, I'm going to do it this way, it would be responded to with a shooting star, with something unusual happening. And the synchronicity just was so beautiful, and still is.
There's another saying here. Now, this is Semjase, who, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
You are.
Okay. What I thought in your book, for anybody who doesn't know how to pronounce it, you at least say, here, this is how you pronounce that name. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
That helps.
Yeah. The thing that I find, we have a saying, thoughts are things. And she has, matter is the embodiment of an idea. And that's 1977. I think that's the same thing.
Yes, exactly. There's so many things in the contact notes and the ones we have in this book that more and more people have opened to over the years. And this whole concept, with quantum physics and everything, that you actually can create and manifest. She's saying that. It's really remarkable, the things that were given to him in the mid-70s, and we're just getting to now. But that means we're moving pretty quickly.
That's hopeful, because what I got from their assessment of us is that we were still pretty much neophytes and possibly too tantrum prone and temperamental to ever figure out how to get to be a peaceful planet, because that was going to take a universal action of consciousness for all of us here on planet Earth to become more focused on peace than killing each other.
We have to balance ourselves, our spiritual beings, with our technical material side. And we haven't learned how to do that. We have not created any kind of balance. We have such issues with anger and frustration with each other, and we think we're right all the time. And you know what? We really aren't. But that's part of the growing process. And I think that's why so many civilizations from the universe are watching us and observing us, because we are like kids playing in a sandbox and fighting over toys. And it's unfortunate, because we are also a group, a citizenry of the planet that is soon going to be in space. And one of the biggest messages that Semjase brought to Billy is, you know what? The people of Earth are not the only thinking beings in the universe. So we don't want to take our bad habits and go visit others, especially when so many of us think we're all alone, that we're the only ones, which to me is quite an arrogant thought. But the universe isn't ready for us to go play in their yard yet.
Some of the explanations that are being put forward in the book and given to Billy, these are very much in 1977 ahead of the times. In the quote, there were numerous examples of extraterrestrial power and intelligence when dealing with Meier. Their abilities to transcend space and time, remove and reshape matter at will, were extraordinary manifestations they continually explained in oversimplified terms. In other words, we weren't quite there yet with our math.
Right. Right.
So,
well, on the topic we were just talking about, Semjase says, enemies and attackers can only contribute to the growth of a spiritually developing man. If we get to that, boy, just think what we could open up.
Instead of letting it be an obstacle, let it be a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And something that you can work through. It loses that I'm right, you're wrong aspect, and you can start a conversation at that point if you start looking at all these things as gifts rather than as mountains to climb.
This, I think, because of our improvement now determining that UFOs do exist. It's not a joke. It's not a ha-ha. It's not a giggle. They do exist. We can go forward from there, because until it was 2017 when the article came out in the New York Times saying the military did validate, yes, UFOs are real. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Oh my gosh. After centuries of pictures on the walls and pictographs and the indigenous culture saying we came from the Pleiades. This is where we originated. They're our star brothers.
Right.
What the heck? What the heck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are we and where are we going? And looking at the past can teach us so much about what we can do with our future.
What she did explain, though, at one point, because everybody wants to be contacted, all right? That's a lot of the fixation on Billy and other contactees. Oh, please, please, if I stand next to you, will they talk to me too? And
Right.
she actually had a reason for why that won't happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but the biggest is that humans have something called auric stench, which I just find that term wonderful.
Okay, yeah. It's like
our frequencies are not balanced. We're not harmonious within ourselves. And we give off this energy of not really negativity, but it's just uncomfortable for others, especially the Pleiadians. As Billy says, they turn over in their head when they're around humans. Yeah.
I call that chaos. Okay. That would be a little disruption, chaos. That we are not quite, harmonious is a good word.
Absolutely. They also had really monitored Billy for 10 years prior to his contact with Semjase. They wanted to make certain that his frequencies, his vibrations, were compatible with theirs.
How long did that contact continue?
The contacts are still going on today. So they went on for a period of years. There was a break in time where there wasn't a lot of contact, and now they've started, and they're still going strong.
Any clue as to why that is?
I think Billy is comfortable with them, and they're comfortable with him, and they recognize his incarnation patterns, which they told him that he had previously been incarnated on the Pleiades. They are just looking at him as a friend now, so they continue the discussion.
Have you had contact?
Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, I have some missing time, but I have not had contact, and definitely not face-to-face contact. I've had wonderful experiences. I've seen craft in many places on the planet, but no contact that I'm aware of.
Well, as an investigator, some of your other cases, you said you were active in Mexico, and it seems that they have a more progressive opinion of UFOs and that kind of spirituality, period.
Right. It's quite amazing because when we were really heavily investigating the waves that began in 1991, people just sort of took it for granted. Okay, they're here. But in this little town of Atlisco, 100,000 people live there. It's outside Puebla in Mexico City. They grab Grandma, Grandpa, the kids, their beer cooler, their dinners, and go have a picnic on this hill called Casita Blanca, waiting for the UFOs to come in. And then when they did, and they'd show up, and there would be objects doing very unique things in the sky, loop-de-loops around each other, right-angle turns, disappearing, reappearing. They'd applaud, they'd scream. And when I asked some of them, why is this so much fun for you? Well, they're just miracles, and we're used to miracles here. And that's how they approached it, and they just loved it.
They valued it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I asked the mayor of Atlisco, are the people around here afraid? He says, oh, no, if they would have done something to us, it would have happened a long time ago. They're just here visiting. And that's how they viewed it. I thought, how wonderful. What an open mind.
Well, Jamie Maussan, isn't he the one who gave a foreword to your book?
Yes, Jaime's a very dear friend. He was like Lee's brother. They were so close. And Jaime is just, we've been involved with his work in Mexico and in other places, all over really. He's also looked into and investigated the Meier case personally and reported on it on Mexican television. In Mexico, the journalists are much more curious than they are here. They will put it on the news when there is a massive sighting, and there have been many. On a January 1st, Reforma, which is the longest road through Mexico City, just literally shut down. People got out of their cars and looked up because there was this fleet of UFOs overhead. It made the front page of every newspaper, was on the 6 o'clock news. This is normal for them. It's okay with them. Congress is now, the Mexican Congress, is looking at whether or not they should become the first country to openly say UFOs are extraterrestrial craft and they exist. That's pretty amazing.
Many people have heard Billy's story. Some of the overlooked highlights include the witnesses, Brit's own experiences along with her husband when Billy disappeared. Quick break. Investigative author and documentary filmmaker Brit Elders researched the Billy Meier case for 7 years. One of Billy Meier's photos is actually famous because it was featured on the poster in the X-Files. It's more than a story about the pictures. It's what happened. In addition to the pictures, the contact. If you go back to what Semjase said about how they have to adjust their frequency, I'm not going to use the right words, but to enter this dimension, that says more than just interplanetary spacecraft travel. There's another dynamic that goes along with this that we're just actually in some of the reports now acknowledging. It's interdimensional, and so that's another complication.
Right, and it's speaking with some of the sound engineers. When they put sound to objects and get the vibration from those objects, different sounds create a different type of appearance. So you can have different waves actually appearing. And that's sort of what they're talking about. They are very much like us in that they're physical, but their frequency, their vibration is slightly askew from us. It's a higher vibration. And so they have to make that adjustment. And they consider it being dimensional, and that's vibrational in terms that a lot of people understand today.
I like when he was trying to describe comparing the notes between her humanoid appearance and his, and saying the earlobes met along the jawline, and she says, "What, you think everybody's going to match you? Excuse me?"
Yeah, what? Exactly. They look different between themselves, and we look different, and this is something that I think is very funny because a lot of people have said, well, do they all look like her? No. Do we all look like each other? No. We have the basics, but that's as far as it goes. Everything else is made differently.
Yeah, It's like the parts are there. It's how they are assimilated and put together, assembled. Yeah.
Right, right.
That's what makes it so fascinating. There's so many elements in this with the contact, with the information that they're trying to give us without, I guess, putting us in over our heads because we're not quite ready for it. But just the bottom line saying you're not alone. And that's all we really want to tell you. And by the way, here's what we can do with our ships. And then they describe the vessels that some have room for 3, some have room for 1, and they are different sizes. And one had to be actually improved because the radiation damage to the trees that it happened to land near. I thought that was, oops.
Yeah, the radiation damage was not just to the trees, but also to Meier. He suffered some issues there. We brought in radiation detection equipment through a major company in Switzerland, did some analysis work at the original contact site on Billy's belt buckle on his moped. Everything registered hot. They had a leaky ship, and they didn't even recognize it. And when they did, they took it out of service, and Billy's health did improve. But he was having issues like bronchitis and pneumonia coming up repetitively.
Now, see, wouldn't that be another indication that something was going on since that isn't natural in his environment?
Right. Very true. The man that was with us while the testing was being done wanted to call in the nuclear commission from Switzerland because he was so concerned that the levels were so high.
Well, the plant damage that was done where the craft landed, that's also still there.
Yes. Yes, it is. When the craft settled down in a few places, it would leave these landing footprints, much like crop circles. They were counterclockwise swirls, and insects of every type you can imagine were teeming in the center of this, and that continued for several years. That grass never grew back properly.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to jump again. This is when they're talking about seeing people and why you have to go to an isolated space. And you mentioned earlier, he said it makes their head turn upside down or whatever, because there's too much interference when you're in a city. And so that they have to get you out where they can streamline the process and just get one-on-one.
That's right. I can't imagine if they have such issues with human or extinct Meeting in a city would not be a good thing for them. They wouldn't be able to handle all of that energy.
Oh.
And especially, I mean, today when you look at the conflicts going on around the world and within ourselves, just as individuals in many cases, it would really be rough on somebody that had a pretty balanced, harmonious nature.
My question, you felt like this was the right time to bring this forward. Is it because you're able to reconnect with Billy as well and put not a new spin, but a new face on it?
Not really. What happened, it was fun. Another synchronicity. The publisher I'd been working with, Beyond Words, said, do you think you would like to bring out Volume 1 and Volume 2 again? And I thought about it, and I thought of all of the new generations coming up that need this information so that they have an opportunity to make decisions, to learn, and to decide whether or not they are interested in potential space contacts, because that's the way our civilization is headed. And I thought this is a perfect time. So I said yes.
I agree. I think this is because of the acknowledgement, for one thing, of UFOs is a first step. They're still having a tough time with the entities, the beings, the things that might also accompany a UFO sighting. But, we'll get there. It's like, they just fly on this.
We will.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the other thing, too, is your husband, just to, to bring this back to front and center, he had an experience while he was working, and this is a rooftop experience while he was working with Meier. And he said they were talking, and he turned to ask him a question, and Meier was gone. Just gone.
That's right. The ladder, Billy's roof is got a real pitch on it. And Lee was just slightly ahead of Billy, and he was back to the left. The ladder was to Lee's right, so Billy would have had to cross in front of him to go down. And Lee turned to talk to him, and Billy's gone. And Lee went, what? What happened? So he got down off the roof and asked everybody, where's Billy? Have you seen him? Nobody had seen him. Hours later, Billy comes walking down the road. They had picked him up off the roof, not where it could be seen, not where a craft could be seen or a beam of light or anything else, but just basically dematerialized him. And he had a contact, and they dropped him off someplace else, and he came walking back to the farm.
Okay, and another one. This is while filming, you tracked his footsteps. And this is like a Bigfoot thing, okay? Because this is what is reported about Bigfoot. Just, just to bring that in there because, hey.
That's right.
I'm on with that. You tracked the footsteps, and what happened?
It had been raining for 2 days, so everything was really muddy. Billy had walked out behind the house to go to a contact, and we saw him, and we thought, okay, we had a Japanese film crew with us. We thought it would be a good idea in the morning to grab the cameraman and go follow his footsteps to see where he went. We did. We walked for about a mile and a half until we reached a clearing, followed the footprints. It was the only indentation in the mud were his boot prints, Billy's boot prints. We got to this clearing, and they stopped. They didn't go anywhere. They just ended. Lee got down, he looked to the left, to the right, all through everything in that field, could not find an indication that Billy had done anything other than stand still and been removed.
Is that on film?
That's on film.
Yay! Okay. Okay, it didn't disappear. Sometimes they get, it gets corrupted, or you thought you were filming and no, the battery wasn't there, and okay, yay, all right. Well,
right.
Obviously, that's okay with
that. That was filmed. Mm-hmm. That was, yeah. And it was quite fascinating because the Japanese crew that was with us was blown away.
Yes.
It was their first trip over when this happened, and we'd taken them back a couple of times. Junichi Yaoi was the host of the show, and he loved the fact that, wow, we're right here, and the footprints ended, and there's this big clearing, and there's no Meier. Where'd he go? Mm-hmm. And then hours later, Billy comes walking down the road again on his way back.
That's what I'm going to ask, too, because there are other countries who were coming in to have an up-close and personal confrontation or conversation, depending on which way you believe. And
right.
So how did that go? Because you saw some of this, too. Just the frenzy and the media around him. What at the time was the basic, what was the impression?
They all wanted to have contact or be removed from the planet. It was very interesting. And when Billy told them, no, you're not going to just have a contact, and you're not going with me to have a contact, and they're not taking you with them, then they started asking questions. Well, why you? What is the big deal there? You know, I want to have the same experience. And they would sit up all night and wait for Billy to have a contact, or if they couldn't find him during the day, they'd try to track him down because they wanted to go have this contact. There was a couple that came in from Amsterdam that, to me, it was hilarious. They sat by the door to his house all night long so that if he left, they'd know it and they could follow him so they could have a contact. And they stayed there for 4 days. It was really something.
Yeah. Well, the other thing was the repercussions, because at some point, I think my memory is there were 2 rolls of film, 36 exposure, and out of that little collection, only 9 were left. And it was because some items were stolen from the fan club. They would come in and take things. Other things just were given away because he thought they were legit. When they said, here, let me take this, I'll research it and give it back. And it never came back. And at the meantime, with all of this happening, then he wanted to go out and get some more photographs. And she said, nope. You already got them. We told you what would happen. Yeah. She's like, we gave you what you got, and I think they had said a warning of don't, be careful, or there was some kind of a warning given to him about being, I guess, more.
He was too trusting.
Yeah.
He just believed everybody that came in had the same value system he did, and that wasn't the case. There were a lot of people in there trying to steal anything. It was just the act of possessing it, basically, that somehow made them feel better about themselves. I never quite understood that. But he was really too trusting in the beginning. And there were people that just swamped him. Not just coming in to try to learn and things like that, but give me, and I want more, and I want more, and I want more. Semjase had told him, you're never going to satisfy those. Those are the people that will never be satisfied. But what we have will help support the claims that you make, and that's why the physical evidence was left with him.
Well, and I like the people who were around him. I think somebody asked, my main interest is in the notes and the information they give. How many times have I seen a craft? Too many times to remember. That's Maria, an office manager. It's like, hey, too many times.
And it's true. Most of the witnesses felt that way. There was the gentleman, Herbert Runkel, that had come in from Germany every weekend just to sit and listen, and he helped Meier around the farm. He was a great guy. That was one thing that he said, after a while, this becomes normal. Seeing the craft becomes normal. Seeing Billy leave for a contact becomes normal. And you just accept it and you go on about life. I just thought, wow, we can all get there at some point that this becomes normal.
What I think is fascinating about the science, the researchers who were doing this and with the sound and stuff, and they said that there was something that really fascinated them, at the same time perplexed them, because it happened with the random signals that they were getting, that there was a level change around 5 cycles per second, frequency modulation that was in the exact area of the natural magnetic resonance of the Earth, the Schumann resonance.
Right, the Schumann resonance, yes. And the other thing that they didn't understand about it, really boggled their minds, was the fact that these frequencies would suddenly merge into one, and then they'd spread out again. The sound is so very unique in itself. But then to have it show on the oscilloscope and everything that they were working with, the uniqueness of it and the strength of it was mind-boggling to them.
Billy sometimes said that when the craft appeared, there was no noise, completely, totally silent.
Right.
Okay, and then it does make noise. So
that's their choice, because they have the ability to basically put a screen up so the sound is not heard or the sound is heard. They do the same thing with craft being seen or not seen.
Mm-hmm.
And we have that on the movie footage where the craft just literally blinks out. It vanishes, and then it blinks back in. And it is 8mm footage. It's not video, so it's not easy to manipulate. But you can see in one scene a craft at the top of the frame, 3 frames down, it's down at the bottom of the frame. And it's just blink, blink, there it is.
See, that is absolutely incredible. And it's just amazing that you got everything on film.
Yeah, that he had the 8mm footage. That was so wonderful. And that is mentioned in the book, and that particular clip of the movie footage is in the book, so that people can see that it's at the top in one frame and at the bottom in the next.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the pictures. There are so many pictures, and when you're trying to figure out, one is it's so shiny and beautiful and clear. There's no fog.
Mm-hmm.
There's, and then the others when there's a tree, like a little branch in front of it, and there's okay. So with that
That's
branch,
one of my favorites.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, there are 3 craft in one shot, and one of the craft is behind a branch, and you can definitely see that the branch is in front of it, and the other 2 are hanging out there in the sky. They're the same distance from the camera. That's a beautiful shot. The other one I love is the shot with the Mirage fighter.
Oh, yes.
It's a Swiss Mirage fighter.
Yeah.
And this gorgeous gleaming UFO.
Like, hello.
In the same frame. Yes.
That's the military guys who say, okay, we tried to tell you about this, but our higher ups said they don't exist. So, well.
Right. They're not real. Mm-hmm.
No. But there's that one. There's that one.
A little bit.
Okay. Well, and there's just so many elements. Like I said, this story basically ticks all the boxes because you have contact, you have witnesses, you have items, you have the metal, the piece of metal, and there's more than that. I'm hoping that with the film that it'll give people more of a 3D thing of this isn't just somebody who went off the deep edge and said, oh, look, I'm seeing all this and tried to fake it, because there's no way the magnitude, the extent that this would have to go. And I know there are some things that they said later on he might have faked a few things, and that I believe after he got the divorce, his ex-wife said, I'm not real happy now, so here's the story. Yeah.
She changed her views, even though we have her on many recordings and videotape of her saying, yeah, I saw the craft. This is what it did. And, I recorded, and she did. She recorded the audio sounds. In one particular instance, she was on one end of the field, Billy on the other. They both were recording the sounds of the craft, and it was sitting there hovering, and she saw it, and she said that on camera.
Okay.
Then she recanted her statements after she was divorced. Yeah.
Sometimes
so
anger
says a lot.
Yeah. Sometimes anger says, okay. Well, and
it does.
That's where everybody's human, that we all have these interesting things that we do. And that might be why the Pleiadians said, you guys are kind of hot. You're hot.
Yeah. That is very, very true. And the interesting thing, too, Wendy, is with the kids, they all saw these ships. Billy had 3 children, and they drew pictures of the ships. They openly talked about them. As they got older, they were harassed in school.
Yeah.
So they sort of backed away from things a bit. The oldest boy, Atlantis, is living at the farm and helping Billy with it now. His daughter was in an accident, and she's not doing well. And his youngest son is just doing his own life and not very involved at all. But his kids, they all talked about what they had seen. It was really a joy to sit around and they'd draw pictures and show you, I saw this, and so was here, and we did that. This is what it sounded like, and they'd make up these sounds. It was really interesting.
I think one of the pictures in the book is of the daughter who drew the craft. I loved what she drew.
Yes, exactly. There is a picture in there.
Okay, I'm thinking that was her. I wasn't. There are other things about this though. With the film now, are you going to connect with either of the 2 boys, his kids?
Lee and I, before Lee passed, we had a meeting with Methuselah, And Billy had one night, we were sitting around the table drinking coffee kirsch and talking about all of the great things. And he was holding a 2 franc Swiss coin, very thick, heavy, like $50, only thicker. And he says, yes, he says, we all have this ability. And he bent that coin in half. And he was talking about how if we focused our mind and our heart, our spirit, everybody could do that.
Yeah.
And so when Methuselah came to visit, when the youngest son came to visit, I gave him that coin. He needed to have that just as a memory from his child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's a powerful memory.
It is. It really is.
So my thought is that the children in the village at that time might also have some insight or some perspectives in, even though for them at that point it might have been a blip and just a circus, a fun thing that happened and then gone. Mm-hmm. Going back and asking, well, what did you think? Did it change your views? What do you think now? Because that's where we evolve.
Exactly. And we need to evolve. And the Pleiadians say they are still evolving. I have not been back to talk to those kids then. They've all kind of, Shmidrudi is a very small place. They've gone off in their own directions. But I have talked to several of the witnesses about how it's changed their life. And what they've wanted to do with their lives is sort of all along the same line. They just want to be a better person and be better to themselves and to everyone they meet. And that seems to be what most people have taken away from this.
I don't know. I think you were involved in the case of the century. Okay, just because of all of this, it's the amount of research that you did and being there 7 years, that's an investment. And that's above and beyond the call of duty to prove something is legit.
Well, the strange thing is you'll never prove it and you'll never disprove it.
No.
But you can present it so everybody can make a decision, which is the point of this. But it is the case of the century. It's the case that should open doors everywhere to think, to just get people to think. Could it be? And if it is, what does it mean? Because at some point, we have to take our place in the universe. We've got to stop being the kids playing in the sandbox. We have got to really look at the world and the universe and all that means. And we've got to do it with some respect, not just for ourselves, but respect for everything out there. And we've sort of lost that. I really feel that now is the perfect time to bring out the book and the DVD again, the Contact video, because we need it right now. We need a wake-up call. We do not want to be like the Pleiadians and self-destruct our first home planet. The Pleiadians actually say they came from Lyra originally. They got into a conflict between factions on their planet, and they destroyed their planet. We don't want to be like them because they had the ability to go off and engineer a planet in the Pleiades. We don't have that ability yet. And if we continue with our warring tendencies, we are really putting ourselves in a position where we could destroy our planet, and we have no way of escaping it.
There was one comment, I think, that had to do with if an intervention is required, and that doesn't mean we call for help or we need help, but if we are damaging our cosmos, we're damaging others in our galaxy, then there might be some involvement that would prevent us from being too toxic.
Ha said that. We are not allowed to interfere yet. And the yet in the discussions that we were having with Billy were, well, what would be the predicate for that? And Billy said, well, if we were going to have a massive nuclear war that would destroy the planet, the entire planet, it would interfere because it creates a ripple effect, that it goes through the universe that energy that we create here goes through the universe. That would not be healthy for them. So they would have to interfere at that point.
That would be like an exponential or extension.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you're done. Okay,
Bye.
yeah. I'm thinking, was the Vogon from the, darn it. I'm blanking on the name, where the Vogon come in and they're going to destroy the planet because, well, we're unneeded and unnecessary and a nuisance. So there we go. I think that might be the Pleiadians who are looking at us now and not going to tell us that there's the fine print of, this is in your future. Okay, we can't tell you because you'll just be so pessimistic. You'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy. So Here's your opportunity to rewrite the script.
I think it is, and I just love the fact that there is a way of looking back at something in this case and saying, "Oh my gosh, it couldn't have been done. We didn't have the technology then." And it's like I tell people that have been detractors through the years. Number one, what evidence did you have examined and where was it examined? And number two, can you duplicate every single thing that Meier presented to us? Not just one thing. Every single thing. That includes the sounds, the movie footage, the photographs, and the metal, and all of the witnesses. Can you duplicate that? That's when you can call it a hoax, if you can do that.
What's interesting is the Calliope quote that you have. It's actually pretty darn good. I didn't believe it before because I had never talked about UFOs or seen one. But after this day, I believe now the UFOs are secondary. The information from Pleiadians comes first. We have to learn to live together, man and woman, different countries, different races, and different worlds.
Yeah.
That was pretty astute.
It is. And it's something that I think people need to heed very carefully because that's where we are.
So the film is going to be coming out soon. And
yes, hopefully in the next 3 to 4 weeks, by the end of May, I would hope.
Now, is that online, on demand, or where will it be available?
It's going to be on DVD, and I know their publisher is now working on getting it on demand and streaming.
All right. So more to come.
Absolutely. Yes. And, there's just still so much going on and so many questions that are created from what's happening now as well as what was happening then. You just have to move forward with it all. And once you're involved with the subject of UFOs, you're never out of it.
No.
And you're just led in so many wonderful directions and meet so many amazing people with amazing stories. We have to be open to those stories.
Well, I'm glad you're still investigating. And is there anything you want to, at this point, I guess, give us a heads up on in terms of your current investigations?
No, right now, it's very interesting. I'm talking to some people about putting together something where everyone can post their stories. They can remain anonymous if it's more comfortable, but post their stories so that they can correlate experiences between each other. There's too much happening in the world that is being missed because people do not have a place as a repository for all of this information. And I think we could learn a lot from it if we did something like that.
That's what's happened with the people who have OBE experiences and near-death experiences. Jeffrey Long had established, I think it's been about 20 years ago when that website first went up for people to talk about their near-death stories. This will be similar, and it really makes a difference.
It does, and it takes away a lot of the stigma, which unfortunately still remains for many people. But there shouldn't be a stigma. The Navy's talking about it. The governments all over the world are talking about it. The public can start talking about it too, without having people point a finger and say, "You're crazy."
Yeah,
we don't need that. We need open minds and hearts, not closed.
Okay, well, once you've had an experience, it changes everything. And so that's what we're hoping, is that more people will be able to have that experience without being frightened out of their boots.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, put your phone down every now and then. Get away from your computer. Go outside and look up.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have an experience if you're just glued to your technology.
I appreciate you bringing this back out, and I'm looking forward to the film. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Wendy. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it. Good conversation.
UFO Contact from the Pleiades, Volume 1 and 2, BritElders.com. Links are in the description for the show. Thanks for listening.